Hey there, AP Stats kids. Sorry about the background. I'm recording this when it's really bright outside. My fault. We can do it though. It'll be alright. I promise. Alright. We're looking at 1.1, analyzing categorical data. Alright, what are we going to learn? Good question. We're going to learn a bunch of stuff. Actually, let me full screen this beast. Yeah, birds. Alright. We're going to look at making bar graphs for categorical data. We're going to look at how we can make them misleading. We're going to look at relative and joint frequencies from two-way tables. And we're going to look at comparing categorical data. So let's get to it. Alright. So first things first, when you're organizing categorical data, remember that's not numerical. That's like, what's your favorite color? That's going to be a categorical piece of data. Oh, geez, my hair. The value is the data, actual data points themselves. Pretty self-explanatory, but we're going to be saying these terms a lot this year. Relative frequency and frequency are two different things. Alright, so frequency is when you count up how many people use cell phones, 2. Facebook, 1. In person, 3. Text messaging, 4. Which that's fine, but honestly what you're going to use more of is relative frequency. Relative frequency means it's frequency compared to everything else. And that's you can either make it a percent or just a decimal. 0.2 in terms of probability is the same as saying 20%. 0.34 is like saying 34%. Okay? Again, I'm going to go pretty quick to this, but a lot of it's pretty basic stuff. Trash that screen. Count. Alright, so again, if your frequency, you're using a count because you count how many there are. With relative frequency, you're going to use a proportion. Proportions are always between 0 and 1. Or a percent, which are always between 0 and 100%. Now, the best way to display categorical data is to use a bar graph. A bar graph is used... Oh, no, I can't move that midway through. A bar graph is used to show counts or relative frequency. Look, it's a bar graph. You can also use a pie chart, but honestly, they'll never ask you to make a pie chart because you need a protractor and a lot of intense stuff. So bar graph is going to be the preferred way to show categorical data. Okay. Now, with that being said, sometimes they use pictograms to show their categorical data. That's not a good way to do it. Don't do it. Let's look at this. That Windows PC is about 1/12 the size of that Macintosh, the Mac. But if you look, it's 400 to like 75, so it's only 4 times as large. Because it's not just taller, but it's also wider, so it produces a misleading information. Okay? Don't do it. Also watch scales. Sometimes they'll take a bar graph, and one company made $200, the other company made $150, which is only $50. But if they start the graph at 100, it makes it look like the one is double, because the one has 100 over 100, and the other one's only 50. So be careful. You should start at 0, guys. Don't put the breaks in your bar graphs, please. It's misleading. Now, what do you do if there's 2 sets of categorical variables? What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? All right. So you make something called a two-way table. Now, what a two-way table does is it shows relationships between 2 groups of variables. So here we have 1 respondent, 2 sets of data. Now we can take this and combine it and make a two-way table. We can find out how many were no and nevers, how many were yes and nevers, how many rented and yes, how many owned and yes, and no. Okay? But then what do we do with that? What do we do? What are we doing? We combine them up. All right. So these are my totals. How many total never used? 657. How many total no's? 1, 2, 2, 1. Now, please notice these two add up to equal 1526, and these three should add up to 1526. Okay, it's an important thing. If they don't, you did something wrong. Now, what's a marginal relative frequency? Good question. Why am I holding a pen? Another good question. Lots of good questions today. I don't know. So, sometimes you want to know if someone is a snowmobile owner, what's the probability that they aren't a member of the environmental club? So that's a marginal relative frequency because you're looking at proportion based on something else you know. For example, you could do what proportion of Trump supporters are pro-gun? What proportion of Republicans are Joe Biden supporters? This is great. I just aged my videos, but that's, you want to know what's the relative frequency within a group. Okay. Or no, I'm sorry. Marginal relative, you're looking at one specific. I'm thinking of joint relative. I'm saving it. I'm sorry, guys. Everything I just have is for joint relative. I got ahead of myself in my notes. So this is, you just take each one. Never used, you take your 657 divided by total. What proportion of total are renters? You take your renters, divide by your total. What proportion own? You take your part, divide it by your whole. Yes and no's. These should add up to 100%, and these should add up to 100%, right? I'm leaving it. I got too many views to make. A marginal relative frequency only tells you about 1. A joint relative frequency, rewind a little bit and listen to what I said about the presidential stuff. So let's do an example. So what percent of my peeps are environmental club members and own snowmobiles? All right. So I go up to environmental club owners. These are the years, right? And now I want to know what proportion of those own snowmobiles. 16. So I'm going to do, I bet you they highlight it. Yep. So I do 16 out of my total. So 1% are both. They're snowmobile owners and environmental club owners. Now, let's do another one. Let's erase this stuff. What proportion of people in the sample are not environmental club members? Not. And have never used a snowmobile? 445. So I'm going to take my 445, divide by my total, and get 0.292. Easy peasy. Now, what if I change it? Well, if I want to know a relationship within that group, so now we have conditional relative frequency. That means your relative frequency depends on something else you know. What do I mean by that? What percentage of environmental club members are snowmobile owners? We aren't looking for an and now. We're looking for if they're an environmental club member, what's the chance that they're a snowmobile owner? So they're yes on the environmental club, and they are a snowmobile owner. But now how many total are in the environmental club? It's not 1526 anymore. Oh, they circled it. It's 305. Because there's only 305 people in the environmental club, 16 of which are snowmobile owners. We don't care about the other people now. I mean, we care as much as you can care for people. and generalized, but it's 5.2%. Let's do another one. Conditional distribution. So a conditional distribution means we're going to look at just one category and break it down. So now if we just look at environmental club, 69.5% are nevers, 25.2% are renters, and 5.2% are owners if you look at snowmobile owning, renting, selling, buying percentage. And if we look at not environmental club members, again, we're just looking at that row. We don't care about totals, okay? Because now we can compare those two groups to see if there's a snowmobile owning difference between the non-environmental club members and the environmental club members. And with that, we want to compare them, right? When you're comparing, make sure you're using relative frequencies, not frequencies, because relative frequencies turns it to percent. So if we had 1,000 environmental club members and 5,000 non, everything's going to look different. The entire bar graphs, you can't compare them. But if you change them to percent, you can compare, because you're looking at fractions of the whole, parts of the whole. Okay. So make sure you don't say more club members never use snowmobiles. You're saying a greater proportion, a greater percent never used. Okay. We're looking at proportions and percents, not total. Now, two ways to do it. You can do a side-by-side bar graph or a segmented bar graph. Here's what those look like. You guys have seen before. Segmented bar graphs kind of stink to make, but you guys can do it. We're going to do it in class. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. But you can see, looking at these two groups, there is a difference between them, right? More people have never used a snowmobile in the environmental club, right? There's an association. Can we show causation? No, but there is an association. Now, if they look the same, we'd say there is no association between them. We're going to spend all year doing this stuff. So association means they're different. No association means the bar graphs wouldn't be different. They look the same. Like this, that's no association. They look the same. Association does not mean causation. Okay? There's a direct correlation between average temperature on the planet and number of pirates. It's an inverse. There's less pirates, world temperatures went up. That doesn't mean the pirates caused the Earth to be colder. Maybe it does. I don't know. But I'm just saying it doesn't show causation. We're going to learn how to show causation later. There you go. Hopefully you learned this stuff. We'll do some things in class. Enjoy.